If you're Seattle, you know Manning has this man crush for Tammy. How do you not make sure he's covered? And he's not like it's not like he's the second coming to Calvin Johnson either. How does he get that wide open in that situation?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's one of those, especially with a team like Seattle, where they're built around their defense, and it just kind of, there's always that one play where it just kind of baffles you, and surprisingly it happened to Seattle. And they're lucky that Peyton didn't get another possession, because he probably would have scored again.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And kudos to Seattle. They did what they had to do, and they came away with a win. But I think Pete Carroll is approaching that Bill Belichick status where he can do no wrong. But if they had lost this game, would we have been right to start questioning Pete Carroll? I mean, a 2-game losing streak coming off the Super Bowl?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to say, I would say people would be more so questioning Russell Wilson, deserve it or not, but it would be more so with, Russell Wilson, oh, well, did we jump the gun on, is he elite or not? That would have been the question, because that's always the stupid question after some, quarterback wins a Super Bowl. It's always, Eli, Flacco. The next year they, come out of the gate, they struggle a little bit, and it's like, oh, he's not elite anymore, even though the whole conversation after the Super Bowl was he's elite because he's won a Super Bowl. I think that would have been the first talk, because that's always the talk if a team struggles. And then it would have turned to probably a little bit of Pete Carroll, because, he pretty much does everything, player control, all that stuff. How he's handled the, contracts and whatnot, that might have been brought into question more so than his coaching.
Yeah, it's the debate that I saw on Twitter was who's better, Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck? And it's,
oh my God!
Yeah, honestly, but if you talk about pure quarterbacking, it's Andrew Luck without a doubt, and anybody that thinks otherwise, I mean, just because Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl, there was a lot of other things going on with that Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl, if you remember correctly, everybody. It wasn't Trent Dilfer.
Yes.
Back. Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl. No one's talking about Rex Grossman and what should have been. You know what I mean? You got to use your head when you think about these things. And the argument was by Pete Prisco and Mike Freeman, two NFL minds that have observed the game, and you would respect their opinion. But I don't understand how anybody can look at that comparison and try to say that Russell Wilson is in the same neighborhood as Andrew Luck.
Well, and it's like Andrew Luck can do everything that Russell Wilson does, and Luck can take off when he wants. He can. He could, if you wanted him to, he could probably run the spread, a spread option, read option, whatever type of offense, and be successful at it. Because he can run, he's tough, and he'll take hits. But he'll take an occasional run up the middle or whatnot. I don't understand why people. There's a lot of sellers on Luck, and obviously he had a bad interception, but the receiver fell down. Yeah, what was he supposed to do? Last week against the Eagles. I just think, people, and also Andrew Luck has a much worse supporting cast around him. Defensively, offensively. Russell Wilson has the best defense in the league. That's why he has a Super Bowl. It's not because of what he's done as a quarterback.
Yeah, and I take nothing away from what Wilson's done. Kudos to him. I did not think he was going to be a good pro at all. I would like to see him on a team whose running back wasn't as durable as Marshawn Lynch, whose defense didn't keep the other team from scoring that much. You know what I mean? And I'd like to see him try to do that. Andrew Luck had to put that team on his back in the playoffs. He had to put them on his back last week against the Eagles, and I know they came up short. But week 1, who'd they open up against with? I forget. It was the same thing. They came storming back and almost won. So
Broncos. They almost beat the Broncos.
Yeah, that was it. So you can't really compare the quarterbacking of the two. If I'm starting a franchise today and I have to decide who I want of the two, I'm taking Andrew Luck, and I'm not thinking twice about it or losing any sleep.
And Russell Wilson, he, fell into a team that was on the rise, and he was drafted in the 3rd round, and he really kind of got lucky that Matt Flynn wasn't ready to step up and take a job for himself, and that's pretty much what it came down to.
Right. He was lucky, basically, that Matt Flynn was Matt Flynn.
Yeah, essentially. And, that's kind of another thing with Pete Carroll. He burns $10 million on, signing Matt Flynn. It's stuff like, Pete Carroll is good at, bringing in a lot of talent and whatnot. I don't think he re-signs the right pieces, though, because a lot of, I guess Michael Robinson retired, but it just seems like the guys they lost in the off season aren't guys that they're character guys, and I think that's kind of a loss that is being overlooked right now with the Seahawks. I don't think they have that same edge to them they had the year before, and maybe that's because they won the Super Bowl.
Well, don't forget about Tavares Jackson either.
Tavares Jackson, and Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, Tavares Jackson is in his 2nd stint with the Seahawks. He's backing up Russell, obviously. But Tavares Jackson was, I don't remember if he was traded or he signed with Seattle after Minnesota ran him out of town to woo Brett Favre in the waning days of the Brad Childress era. And then Tavares Jackson ended up bouncing around even to Buffalo. Buffalo couldn't figure out a way to use him right, but in those days Buffalo couldn't figure out a way to use a football right. But he's back with Seattle, backing up Russell Wilson now. And you know what? I felt good. He came out to take the coin toss for overtime. I was like, good for you, Tavares. You've finally arrived.
I feel like I don't know why but we're going to talk about a little bit of Tavares Jackson. I feel like he was screwed up by being thrown into the fire a little too early.
It could have been.
Because who was it? Gus Frerotte or Sage Rosenfels or some piece of garbage was starting for the Vikings, and then 6 games in, the Vikings panicked and threw Tavares Jackson in, and it was clear that Tavares Jackson was a project, not some guy that was ready to go into that position. And then I think that just derailed his career, was being thrown into the fire way too early.
I'm just looking at the stats really quick. In 2008, he played 9 games, okay, and started 5, and he came back with a quarterback with a rating of 95.4. In 2009, he played 8 games, didn't start any of them. Okay, only had 21 attempts, so we won't look at that one. In 2010. He played in 3 games. 2011, he was finally a starter for Seattle. It was his first season, really, and he started 14 out of 15 games and only had a 79.2 rating. So, and then they're like, okay, this is enough after one season. But Minnesota, he showed signs at times, but when Brett Favre became available, they just pretty much drooled all over themselves.
Well, I can't really, for the way it worked out the first season, it's hard to argue that they were wrong on that, but it seems like, just how they managed Childress was just terrible with how he managed Tavares Jackson. I don't even know why we were talking about Tavares Jackson, but it is too bad that his career was not more salvageable than it is.
I just the way that all went down, I just felt bad for the guy. That's all. By the way, do you know? Because I just looked up Brett Favre's stats on ProFootballReference.com. Do you know what Brett Favre's middle name is? It does not fit with his name at all.
Is it a Daquan or a Demarius or something like that?
No, Lorenzo. Brett Lorenzo Favre. Just doesn't.
That's not a Southern name. Well, it's a Southern name. It's not a Southern farm kid name for a middle name.
When I hear Lorenzo, I don't think Mississippi. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell they were thinking on that one. Well, with about 5 minutes to go here.
Hey,
looking at looking at the as far as guys that are Blake Bortles started play this week in a blowout. It looks like Mike Glennon's going to get some time down in Tampa Bay. Is there any other quarterbacks that you think are in some trouble besides Luke McCown and Chad Henne?
Josh McCown.
Josh McCown, sorry.
First of all, Josh McCown, Chad, and Mike Glennon. This is a classic case of Lovie Smith not knowing how to handle a young quarterback. Again, he screwed the pooch completely. This team was not going anywhere just because Lovie Smith was the head coach. He should have taken his lumps and let Glennon continue what he started last season. But talking about other quarterbacks in trouble, Eli Manning should be in trouble, but he's not because there's nobody there to take his place. Can we count Sean Hill in St. Louis? Because I think that Austin's played well enough that maybe they're not worried about Sean Hill anymore. Matt Castle should be done. I know he's injured, but Matt Castle should be gone. Just let Teddy Bridgewater play. In Houston, I'm looking at what's his name, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I actually won a fantasy game with last week, but then he threw 3 picks this week, so thank God I didn't still keep him there. Blake Bortles should be the starter in Jacksonville. Derek Carr was the right move for Oakland. Tom Brady really hasn't played all that well, but no one's going to talk about him being in trouble. He's the golden boy. Go ahead.
Well, I got something interesting. Eli, they got the win this week, but there's talk of, Cam Newton is not, they haven't extended him in Carolina. I'm guessing that they're going to, that is a priority of theirs, is to bring him back. There's been talk of Cam to the Giants.
I have a hard time believing the Panthers would let him leave.
So do I, but just that's the one thing. It's an interesting idea that the way that offense is structured in New York right now seems like it would fit Cam pretty well. It just seems like an interesting idea. I can't see it happening, but I can't. As a Giants fan, I wouldn't hate to see it happen either, because it does look like Eli's on the downward side of his career. Well, but we've seen that before with Eli, where he's looked terrible, and then they wind up winning a Super Bowl. So,
in all honesty, as long as the next quarterback doesn't throw to the other team, it's going to be an upgrade.
That's true. That is a very good point. Yeah. Well, and then you got Ryan Nassib. There's a lot of options for the Giants if Eli doesn't pull his head out of his ass. Really.
Ryan Nassib was probably the greatest smokescreen in NFL draft history. Because there were rumors about him going number 1 overall, or I think the Bills had the 3rd pick or whatever that year, and the Bills were going to take him, and because of Doug Marrone and his ties, he ends up falling like 2 or 3 rounds to the Giants, and he barely sniffs a field. And there was talk in the preseason about him getting cut. It's just hilarious to me how he went from it was complete smoke about him being that highly thought of and going forward. But another quarterback that's in trouble is Ryan Tannehill and the Dolphins. I think his leash is getting shortened up.
Well, what do they have behind him? Do they have anything behind him?
Well, they went and spent money on Mike Wallace. They went.
Well, I understand that. Well, he also has. They lead the league in drops. The Dolphins do. So that can't all be blamed on. Tannehill's not playing well either. But who's their quarterback? Do they have anybody behind him?
Hold on. I don't even know who their backup is. That's a very good question.
Usually the Dolphins have like 3 guys that should be backups